I'm going to begin the recording. So today the focus is going to be on Spectrum E's e-licensing module. We will focus specifically on the processing of terrestrial fixed license applications. We won't focus tremendously on the technical analysis aspects of the tool. This is really going to be more on the we're going to focus on the non-engineering aspects of the tool. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's the agenda for today. We'll do a little bit of a brief introduction into Spectrum Center and Spectrum E, the e-licensing module. Then we'll proceed with a product demonstration and we'll have questions and answers. If at any time during the presentation you can't hear me or there's a disruption in the video for you, just send us a little message. Just let us know so we can make sure to be aware that that you're still able to hear us. So who we are, what we do. We are spectrum management specialists. Spectrum Center is the unification of the former ATDI offices in the US, the UK, and Brazil. Our core business is to resell Spectrum E. Is a commercial off-the-shelf software. We offer it as a perpetual license product or as a software as a service solution. And Spectrum E is a platform that supports turnkey spectrum management activities, including engineering, remote measurement, and e-licensing. We also obviously provide enterprise solutions based on modified off-the-shelf implementations of adapted versions of Spectrum E, and we provide professional services as well, consultancy, measurement drive testing, custom software development for current and new customers in the regulatory and commercial industries. Spectrum Center's spectrum management software system is a web application called Spectrum E. Spectrum E is composed of the following product modules. Today we're going to focus on the e-licensing module, but there's two other modules known as technical analysis and remote monitoring. There are several examples of the technical analysis module and its features on our YouTube channel, covering propagation models, covering interference analysis, model tuning, several things. So I do invite you to visit the YouTube channel if you want to learn more about the technical analysis features of Spectrum E. The remote monitoring is the connection to monitoring or measurement systems in a remote manner and scheduling mission requests and measurement task orders, this sort of thing. We don't do public webinars like this because we don't sell the measurement or monitoring equipment. So if you're interested in a demonstration, we do invite you, of the remote monitoring module, we do invite you to participate in, or request a specific one-on-one type webinar presentation, and we can coordinate that. So one particular strength of Spectrum E is that it's inherently able to support what we call communication with the public. Because it's a web application, it is already prepared to act as a web portal. So you can have this interaction between what we call internal and external users to the Telecommunication Regulators Administration. And this can be allowed to perform, or this kind of interaction can be relatively automated to accomplish various tasks. And that's essentially what we're going to focus on with the e-licensing module, is how the operator or the applicant can interact with the regulatory authority through this portal and submit an application and obtain a license and this sort of thing. In terms of implementation, we have a few options: local, cloud, and hybrid cloud. Local is exactly what it describes here. It's a local implementation, meaning the software stack, the web stack is taken, downloaded, or we deliver it also on a flash drive to a customer, and they install it in their local IT environment. That can be in their own intranet on a local server or just on their own laptop. You can see we support completely disconnected environments. So there is no requirement for the internet just because the system is a web application. That just means it's web browser based. The client interface is just an HTML5 compliant web browser. You don't need to have an internet connection for the software to work. So that is one type of implementation. The other one is the cloud implementation, where you essentially leverage the commercial cloud offering of Spectrum Center, and you connect to our servers essentially, and you can connect through any of your devices. Can be a Mac, laptop, a PC, mobile device, tablet, and you just operate the system online. So that basically takes the whole IT aspect kind of out of the equation. You don't have to worry about installing and configuring the system to work. You can just log in and get to work right away. And we have several customers that prefer to work that way as well. And then finally, the hybrid cloud. And this is a combination of the two previous delivery options. One where you connect perhaps, or you have part of the system installed in your local environment, but then part of it you maybe call online. One example is we have customers that have the e-licensing module installed in their local environment, and they call our system's API to perform engineering functions. So they don't have the engineering module installed, the technical analysis module, in their local environment, but they do occasional technical analysis through a web service call to our API. And so that's what we call an example of a hybrid cloud type implementation. All these implementations can be synchronized so that updates are distributed in a manner that keeps all these, every customer that has this variety of implementation types supported with the latest version of the software, the latest product updates, patches, and bug fixes. So that is available through our online portal. So updates on all aspects of the software can be obtained that way. So regarding the e-licensing module, we'll focus some on business productivity improvement examples, and then we'll talk a little bit about the radio services supported, the request types supported, and then highlight a little bit of the system's workflow management and business rule management capabilities, and we will demonstrate that as well. So some of you who may have participated in the first version of this earlier version of this module that we presented last year may be familiar with some of the stuff that I'm going to highlight today, but you'll also be probably interested in a lot of the new features that we hadn't presented previously. So we will get to that very soon, the new capabilities. But if this is new, then you'll bear with, this will all be interesting for you, and will be a good orientation as to where we're going to get to with the product demonstration. But in this slide, you can see a good example of a typical interaction between what we call a business user external to the telecommunications regulator and a government side end user. We could call this a workflow. It's a very simplistic kind of example of a workflow. We understand that not all end customers work this way. So the workflow is implemented into Spectrum for frequency authorizations or for equipment type approvals and so forth. Those are highly customizable, and we're going to highlight how we can approach the customizations of the workflows during the demonstration today. But in this example, you see there is a part where the business user or external user, which is the term we will use for the remainder of the presentation, they prepare and submit an application, and then it is sent to the government side user or the internal user. And then the internal user receives and validates the application, and then may perform a technical review. This can include an interference analysis, electromagnetic compatibility assessment, etc. And then finally, they determine whether to authorize or reject the request. If they approve it, eventually it will go to a registration and an invoicing phase. And there can be other steps there that can be coordination steps, etc. But eventually it gets to some sort of an authorization and then an invoicing, and then the external user is notified about the status of their application and then the subsequent authorization, and they receive the invoice, and at some point they have to pay the invoice, and then the authorization is finalized, and then operations can commence. So it's a kind of really a simplistic example of how this interaction works. It can be a lot more complicated. Several more steps and states and changes can be involved, of course, but this is just to highlight kind of what we're going to focus on today. So the purpose of the interaction is to basically facilitate this kind of activity. Also inherent in the facilitation of this activity is the auditing and tracking of the application. So the world moves away from the classic paper process, or at least complements the paper process with an electronic process. Yeah, there's several advantages that are brought into play. One of them is, of course, the tracking and the logging of the activity. It is an auditable type activity, so that is included in our tool. We'll highlight that briefly, how the system tracks the applications and tracks the status of the application and how it's processed and the activity performed. The e-licensing module also includes a business rule engine, or what we call a BRE, with more than 300 business rules relevant to the processing of spectrum management related applications. And as with workflow management, the business rule engine is also highly customizable, and there is a console, a panel known as Business Rule Manager, where an authorized end user can create or modify business rules in the system. Essentially, these are the field controls that confirm whether a field has been supplied correctly, if it meets certain criteria. If it's a required field, the system will automatically, notify the user that they're missing something because the field is required. So here's an example of measured business productivity. This is for a customer in Brazil known as Anatel, and we delivered the Spectrum E platform to them. And but through the implementation of the e-licensing module and the technical analysis module, essentially we were able to reduce their wait time at processing license applications in a dramatic manner. And you can see on the graph here, this is a graph that was prepared by Anatel. As you can see, part of it is still in Portuguese. But the blue curve represents the amount of technical analysis or licensing requests that they had to process. As you can see, it varies from different months to different months. And in some cases, they would have very high volumes. And then the red curve represents the amount of time needed to perform the analysis, and the y-axis is time in days. So as you could see, as the system was implemented and matured, the time needed by the first quarter of March, first quarter of 2016, the time needed to process the applications would become reduced dramatically. And despite increases in demand in incoming requests, the processing time got smaller and smaller, to the point that at a certain point, the processing time would only take about 9 minutes for a license application. So due to the improved efficiency provided by Spectrum E, there was just a core group of Anatel employees that were needed to handle the increased workload for major events, such as I think they had World Cup, and then they had the Olympics around this time. And so usually those increase in events would be a little bit overwhelming for Anatel. But with the Spectrum E platform, they were able to handle them well. Now, the radio service supported. So this is an example from the interface. We support all the principal radio services, TV, radio broadcasts, international mobile, terrestrial fixed and mobile, fixed satellite services, broadcasting satellite services, maritime services, aeronautical services. So those are principally the main radio service groupings from the ITU. Today we're going to focus on terrestrial fixed, but we have pretty much everything covered, and we have a little bit more as well for experimental services and so forth. The request type supported. So these are all the kinds of requests that the system can process. Today, we're not going to focus on the external user registration and organization registration just due to time, and that was covered pretty well in another webinar on equipment type approval. So if you go on our YouTube channel and you look over that webinar, you should be able to see how that's supported. So that's very useful. But today we're going to focus on the new license request, new frequency for frequency authorization. But the system can support modifications or renewals of existing licenses, suppression or cancellations of existing licenses, and equipment type approval, which is a video that we had covered already, a topic we had covered already. The following list are additional examples of the request types the system's configured to support. So we can also support license transfers, entity name changes, temporary use of spectrum requests, equipment site registrations, and payment plan requests. So we're not going to cover all this today, but if you'd like to learn more about how the system supports these other types of requests, please let us know. Send us an email at sales@spectrum.center. One additional feature in the tool that is unique to, we believe, to the Spectrum E system is that the e-licensing module supports QR code verification to allow an inspector to confirm if a printed license or certificate that's generated by the Spectrum E e-licensing tool is authentic or not. So here you have an example of a license that's auto-generated by the software, and it has the details of the licensee and the organization and the technical parameters of the network that's been authorized, the frequency, the coordinates, etc., the power, antenna height. This is for a link. And you have this QR code that's created here. So what someone can do if they want to know if this is an authentic license or maybe a forgery, they can scan the code with their QR code scanner that they would have on their mobile device. And then you'll get a result, and it'll either say a pass or a fail. So what the system would then do is check on the server. It has the QR code basically as a link to the server to confirm if that certificate is actually registered on the server or not. So this would be the main server of the regulator. So that is one way that we bring a little more value to the licenses, in particular mitigating potential forgeries and things like this. So as you can see in the screenshots here, if it is an authentic certificate, you'll get a pass. No other detail is necessary, of course, because it's private information usually. And if it's not an authentic certificate or license, you get a fail. So there's two examples of the results that you could get. So workflow management, this is just a screenshot of the workflow management panel. And you can see here, there's a handful of states for a particular workflow for terrestrial applications. And you have a created, pending, understudy, license, pending removal, rejected state. So this can be edited. Additional states can be added to the workflow. Luke will highlight how that's performed. And we'll cover that in an example during the product demonstration. But this has been something that a lot of our customers have been asking us about for a while, and we're happy to be able to demonstrate it. And business rule management. So just like the workflow manager, there is a business rule manager in the tool. So you have a panel as well that administrators would be able to go to different fields in a particular form. Here I'm highlighting the mission designator field, and you can specify if it's a required field or not, or if it's a field where you would input maybe a required range of values. You put in a minimum maximum limits or in or out type rules, and there's a number of different rules that can be applied to different types of fields. So that can all be configured. You can add or remove those type of controls or modify them through this business rule manager. So that's all in the GUI. Okay, so I think we're ready to begin with the product demo. So I'm going to jump over to Spectrum E. So many of you who've been participating in our webinars are familiar with the way to access Spectrum E. It's spectrum.center. That's our public portal. And if you do have interest in trialing the tool, just send us a request for access here. And you come to a form, you put in your name, email, and then you just send us a request on what you're interested in. If you're not quite sure, just enter in a message here, and we'll be able to respond to you and prepare a trial for you in a one-on-one demonstration to make any additional clarifications on the tool's capabilities. So there is a process for the external user in this. To the external user, let's say if I imagine I'm an operator trying to process a licensing request for frequencies. There's a process to get registered to access the system. We're going to skip that process just because it takes a little time. Again, we've covered that in a previous video. So if you're interested in seeing that, I suggest the type approval video that we covered in the past on our YouTube channel. But I've already registered this test operator. Here's he's gotten his confirmation email, everything like this, and I'm going to now log in. I've defined the password, and I'm ready to access the system. So this is after several steps of authentication. So I'm in the system now. And this is the external user's dashboard. Basically, it's a pretty simple dashboard, doesn't have access to very many features. If you're familiar with the Spectrum E tool, it doesn't have access to the engineering tabs here. There's a network and map tab. So this is simply for someone to supply a request for a license. Really, you could look at the calculator. There's also the ability to view the spectrum allocation chart, but not really much beyond that. So you can click on the e-licensing option here in the dashboard, and we'll immediately be taken to a page where the user has to identify what company or organization they represent. Now, if it's an individual, they could begin to work on their own. They don't need to necessarily select an organization, but if they are representing some sort of organization, or if they represent multiple organizations, they need to first go here and pick what organization they represent. In this case, this user only has one. It's operator XYZ is the company that they represent, or they're representing for this request, so they select that one record. And then they click select org. And what that basically does is allows them to now act on behalf of that organization. There is an entire process to registering organizations. We're not going to go over it today. Again, that was covered in a previous demonstration. Again, the type approval demonstration, how to register organizations. But there's a process for that as well, an approval process and everything like that. So all that's been done. This organization was registered. This external user was authorized to act on behalf of that organization. So that's several steps into the process for submitting an application. And once that's done, you don't have to keep doing it again, obviously. So I'm going to represent operator XYZ, and I'm going to select the option here, terrestrial, fixed, and mobile services, because that's the kind of activity that I want to address. I want to supply a request for frequency authorization for terrestrial fixed services. So once I click on that, I get taken to another page where I can see three different tabs. I can see an applications tab, a license tab, and a licensed terrestrial tab. I also see now that it always lists the operator that I'm acting on behalf of, or the organization I'm acting on behalf of. And also there is an ID, and that's auto-generated by the system that highlights who this or is assigned to this particular organization. So that is important to note that the ID is human readable. In this case, it's not just an alphanumeric string. It is highlighting a few things. One, it says SC in the beginning, but this would, in a real case, it would probably represent a combination of the country of origin as well as when we get to licensing, it'll the actual license themselves. It'll display a little more information about the license. This is an acronym for the operator, the licensee, and then you have the year at the end, and then a sequential value for the number of the organization that was authorized in that given year. So 003 means it's the third organization in 2020 that was registered in the system, in the Spectrum E system. So that helps, analysts or operators kind of identify themselves a little easier, like a human readable identifier. And we'll see this kind of automatic identifier or identification values generated in the system as we create licenses, as we authorize microwave links, things like this. So I'm here and I see my menu options on the left have changed a little bit, and I have this one option, new option called New Application. I see that I have in the Applications tab 2 other applications that were created and they're in a draft state. So I can always go back to one of them just by clicking on any of them and clicking on Edit if I wish, and I can do other changes, as you'll see. But I'm going to start over. I'm going to create a whole new application. We also have License tab where I can see what was licensed previously to this organization, Operator XYZ. And this is where we can see that they got the licenses have a license number. In this case, it's a slightly different variation of their organization ID. In this case, I have FX for fixed service. And then you see the sequential value now represents the number of license that was authorized for that organization for the given year. So after every year, this number resets for the licenses, and same with organizations. And then if I click on license terrestrial, I can see all the licenses, all the links that were authorized. And we have here individual link IDs that kind of follow the same kind of numbering system, very similar. Again, SEFX for the service, operator acronym, and then the number of the link and the license associated to it. It's the license associated to it and the number of the link that's generated for that year. So I see all this information, so that's good to know. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my applications because I want to create a new one. I'm going to click New Application. So you see in the form that's created, some information is automatically filled out regarding the licensee name, the licensee ID, the licensee acronym. There's no authorization yet, so the submission and expiration dates are not completed. Here in the additional information section is where I can define details about the application request that would ultimately be relevant to billing and other processes. So here I can specify if it's a temporary use license request or not. If it is, I would specify the expiration date for the temporary use license. Because it's a new application, by default it's set as an addition. But if I were modifying an existing license, it would be a modification. Or if I were choosing to cancel or suppress an existing license, it would be a cancellation. The organization status is pretty simple. It's reflective of the ITU's guidance in their ASMS tool, so you can define if the organization is a government entity, a private entity, some sort of international organization, maybe like a nonprofit, or it's an individual. So I'll say it's a private entity. And then the nature of service, this also can be very customized. Right now we're offering these types of services. So you've got a list, but obviously this kind of specification would impact the billing aspect of the license. So certain organizations, certain types of organizations that operate or perform certain types of services may have exemptions from billing, from having to pay fees for their licenses. So in this case, I'm going to pick commercial. We're going to pretend we're an operator. And the type of service, this is also relevant to the billing and also how the license is organized in the system. And we'll focus on, for today, the MBO microwave backhaul example. This also is very customizable in the system. The type of service can be changed to what the regulatory organization prefers. And then any additional information here we'll put in, let's say, need additional links for, let's say, 5G backhaul. This comment field can also be expanded if necessary. Very simple. So then we put in the applicant information because the applicant can be different from the contact, the organization contact. So here I'm going to put in some information, kind of fill this out pretty quick. And that saves us a little bit of time. I can click this validate button to check if I'm missing any particular fields, and in which case the software will give an on-screen notification that I'm missing a critical field or not. This also is related to the business rule engine, how this validate function works. For these purposes, I kind of deactivated it at the moment, but Luke will cover a little bit of how the business rule engine is tied to the validation function and can prompt the user to complete fields that were maybe left out or not completed correctly. So that helps the regulator that receives the application to not have to spend so much time correcting incorrect entries into the form. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I have a new request now, also in a draft state. And now I can add objects to it. So there's a few different types of objects that I can add. One, I'm going to focus first on attachments, and then we'll go to the other objects option here. So I'm going to click on add attachments, and this is where I can just add any kind of attachment. So this can be some sort of a PDF file or some sort of document. So for example, maybe we will do something like a legal document is maybe required to accompany with the application. This again can be customized to what a regulatory authority would require. Also, we can limit file sizes and we can limit format types, this sort of thing. But once this is completed, the user fills this in, clicks on save, I should say, and then the attachment is stored. And it can be viewed again by the applicants. They go back, they can see if their attachment was loaded correctly, and it looks correct here, so it opens in the browser. I should mention that PDF and JPEGs will open in the browser. If someone attaches an Excel spreadsheet, it will be downloaded if the end user wishes to preview it. So I added some attachments, just did one out of the three options. And now I'm going to add objects. And what we mean by objects are the network data, basically. So here I get taken to another page called point-to-point links. And this is where I can either add a link through an entry form or through a list, or basically a spreadsheet upload. I'm going to go over the form example, and I'm going to go over both. I'm going to show how we can do both. So if I click on the point-to-point option, it takes me to a form dedicated for this, and here I can obviously enter in the parameters manually of my request. So I can put in the name of the site, and this is the link, so I got to do two ends. I can put in the coordinates in degrees, minutes, seconds. I can change the orientation. There's north, south, east, west, for the latitude and the longitude. If I wish, I can, here's a preview of the position of the node, the first node or node A of the link. If I click on the preview screen, it'll take me to a map interface where I can reposition my my site, basically move the cursor wherever I prefer, wherever is located. If I just want to visualize that, I can do that here, and I can zoom in to any position here, and then make another make an update basically to the position. So let's say if my point A is actually on this ledge, I move my cursor over that, my crosshairs, and then I click apply. and it'll update the location. I can also toggle to a satellite view if that helps with my mouse. So maybe that's going to be helping me. I'm going to move over here. There we go. And when I'm ready with that and completed, I update, close, and then my new position is entered into the system that way. But again, I can enter manually the coordinates if I know them. Terrain elevation, this can be taken from the system's database or can be entered manually, how the user prefers. The system does have a complete terrain model database for the entire planet, covered at 30 meters for everywhere in the country, in the planet, and then different resolutions depending on better resolutions depending on different regions of the Earth. So some areas we have 5 meter, 10 meter, and 1 meter even resolution of elevation data. Now, finally, the next step would be selecting the particular band of interest. So if this is a microwave link and maybe a little higher bands, I might be interested in something in the 5 gigahertz, 5 to 6 gigahertz band. So I can pick the band. This is defined in the system's spectrum planning module, which we will cover actually in our next webinar. So the user, would be for the internal user or the regulatory user, would be able to define the service bands, the allocations, the channel allotments, this sort of thing. So for this particular band, this allocation band, I do have a list of channels available. The user can pick the channel that they would like, or that would be defined by the regulator upon authorizing the frequency. So this is all controlled by the spectrum planning module, which we will cover actually in the next webinar, which will occur in 2 weeks from now. And I can continue to fill in the rest of the parameters. I've already done this, as you can see, so I'm just going to move a little quick just to save time. We're going to do site B, and we're going to do a similar thing as what we had done before. This time I'm going to move my link position to another part. Down here if I wasn't mistaken. Now we'll just go ahead and move here just for sake of argument. It's just an example. And we continue. And we can continue to fill out the information. And once you're ready, I can click on the validate to make sure I'm not missing any fields. If I were missing some fields, then they were critical fields. If I click validate, it should tell me that I'm missing some parameters. So it says I've got some mistakes, but we're gonna skip over them for now, just for purposes of brevity. But I would normally go through and correct those mistakes. So some of these have been corrected, some have not, but we'll save it. So that's if I relatively satisfied with my application request. I can save the request at any time. I don't need to have everything completed at once. And I can always come back to it and edit it as long as the request is in a draft state. And so in the system, the 0-1 state is always a representative of a draft state. So I can continue to add in more requests there. But let's say I have several links that I want to enter into the system, and I don't want to keep going into the form and creating this manually. And then maybe the duplicate option that I have here, which is maybe nice and convenient, is still a little too cumbersome. Maybe I have 30, 40, 50, 100 links that I need to upload. And so I'd like to save a little bit of time. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete those cases. And I'm going to go to the add object list option. Now this is through a spreadsheet. If you want a copy of the template of the format of the spreadsheet, you can click on the object list template, and we'll download an example of the format, the structure of the spreadsheet. So there's the structure, and we can go to the object list, add object list option if we want to get some information about the fields. Click on format info, you get some definitions of what each of the fields mean. So that helps understand how to fill out the spreadsheet. You can download a copy of this if interested, to share with people. And we have that for all the services, for broadcast, for mobile, for aeronautical, maritime, etc. So I'm going to add this, but first I have to prepare my spreadsheet accordingly. So because this is being able to support multiple types of requests for multiple users, it is important to populate your spreadsheet correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. So one key parameter is each new application has a unique ID. Now this is an alphanumeric string, a randomly generated alphanumeric string that's always unique. So that has to be in the application request. So I need to always update my latest application request with this information. It's pretty easy to do in Excel. Also need to have the licensee ID. So I already have that in there. This is the XYZ032020. So that's correct. That's the licensee ID. So those are the main parameters. And then of course you need the details of your application request here. So this is the links and their frequencies, the desired frequencies, duplex separations, emission designator, coordinates, antenna heights, powers, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and save this spreadsheet, and then I'll be able to upload it. If I don't have that entered in correctly in terms of application and licensee ID, the system will not, for that particular customer, that particular organization, it won't recognize the list. It won't recognize the file. It won't associate it to the application. So we're going to go number 7. This is the last one that I had done. And then again, you can do a validation to check if it's correct or not. That helps the internal user, the regulator, to not have to check everything for the operator or for the applicant. But if everything's correct, in this case it is correct, you can click import and we'll say no errors are found, and you can proceed. And so all the links here are now imported. It's actually 35. If I want to expand my view, I just click the increase the filter here, and I can see these are all 35 links. So I can continue to edit them individually. I can select any one of them and edit their information if something's missing or incorrect or so. But for now, we're going to assume everything's fine, and we're just going to move on. So this is an object attached to the application. If I want to go back to the application itself, I just click on the application tab, and here is my application request. So I've attached so far a PDF file. I've attached 35 links, and I may be ready to go. I may be ready to submit. So if I am, I just click on submit here when I'm back in the applications tab, and it will submit the request, gives regular terms and conditions. Again, this is usually customized for every customer. This is a kind of a shrink-wrapped terms and conditions that the external user has to accept, or else the request won't be submitted. And then once it's submitted, it's changed to an 02 state, in a submitted state. So that changes the application. I can't, as the external user, I can't edit it anymore. I can only view it. I can view the attachments, I can view the objects, I can view the application itself, but I can't edit it. There's no ability to save changes anymore. So that is the end of the first part of the process, the prepare and submit stage. Now we're going to go into the internal user. So I'm going to log in through the same portal, but with the different credentials. And you can see I get to the e-licensing stage. I get to the new dashboard for the internal user, and I see an e-licensing option here at the bottom. This dashboard is obviously much more robust and have a lot more options. I have the network option, the map option, because this internal user has access to the technical analysis module and the engineering tools and many more things. I'm going to go to my e-licensing here. I see this is the operator that I want to analyze. I see I can pick different operators here, different licensees. So I'm going to select this one. I say I want to look at him, see what's coming. I got an email notification, for example, that this operator had submitted a request. I'm going to go terrestrial fix, and I see there's a few drafts, but there's one that's incoming that's been submitted. So that one I may want to review. And I may look at the attachments. Well, actually, first I have to pick it up. So this notifies the operator that the request has been received and it's being reviewed. And now I can look at the attachments. I can view it in the browser, see if it's correct. Let's see, there's only one that was submitted. I can look at the objects. I can, let's expand this again. I can select them all. If I wish, I can pick them up for analysis. So they're all now under study. And I can, if I wish, send them all to the engineering module and to do a technical analysis. So I can select them all, click send to map, and I can send them as microwave links, and in which case it'll go to the engineering part of the tool. And here I can map them. Now it says 70 because I've imported this before, so I kind of repeated the work when I was preparing, but this is the link network. And I can, from here proceed to do path profile calculations. I can proceed to do interference studies. I can do kind of viewshed analyses, etc. So all that is possible. I think I can highlight one of the viewsheds if I see it, or I might have to zoom into that particular part of the network, but it's all possible in the tool. We're not going to focus too much on the engineering module today, but if you would like to know a little bit more how the engineering analysis are performed, I'd be more than happy to focus a separate webinar on that for you. I go back to the application then, and I can decide to approve or reject. And let's say because only one attachment was submitted, or for whatever reason I feel that something's incomplete, that the system didn't catch, I can reject it. If I do reject it, I can enter in a cause for the rejection. Now this isn't the end of the line for the operator. They can correct this, but let's say you're missing applicant's photo ID. So that should have been included with the application request. So I rejected that. So the internal user will then log in. The external user will receive a notification. They'll log back into the system, select the organization, they'll go here, and they'll see their application was rejected. And if they click on the view memo option, they can see what the reason was for the rejection. So that's not the end of the line. They can reset the state of their request back to a draft state, and they can edit it. So in this case, it was missing an ID. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add the ID, the applicant ID. So here I've added a copy of the passport. Close, and now I can view the attachments. And it looks good. All right, so that's added. So that's what the regulatory organization was asking for. I can resubmit as before, and then the internal user will receive this. And so we'll go back kind of to where we were before. And we'll go back to the e-licensing. And we'll go here and we'll see submitted, pick it up, and then we can view again and see, okay, this attachment is there. Okay, so some corrections were made. If that was all that was really pending to be corrected, then can proceed with the approval. Also, the changes are tracked in a history view, a logging, so I can see the notes that were given. I can see the changes that are made, the states that are changed. So there's a logging to the changes in each application request that the system stores. So that's important as well for the internal users to be able to log the changes to a request. I'm going to go ahead and approve this request. I then specify the date I wish to issue the authorization, the date I wish the authorization to expire. I have a calendar picker if I want to change this. I'll save. I'll leave it, and there you go. So it should be auto-generated. And I should have in the license tab a new license. And then I can now, if I go into the individual objects for that license, I can pick a particular link and create the license there, or I can do it in batch as well. So here I've created the license. It has the QR code. It has the summary and the details. It's all generated automatically for that particular link. But I can also do it in batch. The external user has the ability to see that authorization as well. So they get a notification that their license, their application request was authorized. So they can log in and they can see this information when they get into the system. So I'll go back here, and now you see the request is no longer in applications, it'll be in licensed. So it'll be here, and then we'll pick one of those ones because the number's not showing up, but we'll generate the object licenses. And it does it in batch, so you'll have all the different links. And the formatting of this can be done differently. There's a template editor that we won't focus on today, but the template editor would allow the user to change the formatting of the license as well. So that's just to highlight today how the e-licensing process works in the system. It's, as you can see, relatively simple to learn. It's pretty simple to execute. There's a fair amount of automation there. And we're going to go a little bit on how the automation is managed through the graphical interface with Luke. So I'm going to transfer the connection over to Luke, and he'll be able to handle the workflow management and the business role management. And then we'll handle any questions at the end.
Okay, hello, good morning. So now we're going to see the workflow manager and also the BRE manager. For that, I'm logging as an internal user. And in this particular view, I have the access to the workflow manager and also the access to the rule manager. So let me open these two and let's explain this a little bit. So inside the workflow manager, what we are going to have is the context selection area where we can select what specific object we want to work with. So for today's demo, we have been working with the terrestrial application. So it's a group application is the main area. And then for each role, we are going to have a specific workflow. So from the external user, we can see that the initial role state is going to be application 01. So let me split the screen in two so we can see both together. And because now I'm logging as the internal user, let's go to the internal role. So now we are working with the terrestrial, fixed, and mobile services. So if we click on any of the records, we see that it have a state related to this record, and this one is draft. So we also have that information here on the workflow manager. That is the first state is going to be draft, and we have actions or events related to that specific state, and are the same one that we can see on the left bottom of the page. And each of these actions is going to be related to one of specific Spectrum E action, and some of these are also going to be related to a specific target state. So for example, the submit action that we have here is going to be changing the state for this specific record, and we can see that it's now highlighted the second state, that is APP02, that is submitted. So it means that when we are going to run this action, and if this action is complete successfully, it's going to change the state of the record to the next one. If we click on the on the next state, that is application 02, we are going to see what are the events that can change the state to come to this specific state. So if we go to draft state, we can see that the cancel request and the modification of the approved license is going to end up in this specific state. So for this, if we click here and we submit, and we accept the terms and conditions, so it's a successful event, we will see that the new state is going to be app02, that is this one. So by submitting the application, we are going to end up in this specific state. If we want to create a new state, the way to do that is clicking on this button, that is new state. So let's say that we want to create a state that is app03A. That is something that is the legal review. Let's say that there's a new step that before we pick up, we need to send it to the legal department to approve it. So we add the state, and it's going to appear at the end of the page. Oh, sorry. We are in the terrestrial. We go to the broadcast. Okay, if we want to change the target of the event, let's say that we are going to use the, okay, we have here, that's why, because it looks like I have already added this before, so that's why I forgot to delete the demo. So when we add some specific state, it's going to be appearing empty. So what we need to do is to add a specific state and a specific event that is going to be targeting this new state. So for that, let's go back to the terrestrial group application, internal. So let's do that again. On the state. So now we can see, because I already deleted that is at the bottom of the page. So let's move that up to put it where it should be. So we have this state that is after the submit state, and we want to tell this state that we want to add a new transition that is going to aim to this specific event. So for that, we are going to say that add a new transition to the submit state that is sent to legal department, and the event is going to be up next. This is a key for that. And we want to aim the new state that we just created, that is app02A. So now we have the transition, and we see that in the app02 is already here. So now let's apply the changes. And when we refresh the page, on the right side, that is the actually internal user interface, we click here and we see that we have the send to legal. When we send to a legal, now we don't have any action related to this, so we need to add the action. So let's add new action that is going to be view, because we want the legal department or the legal state to be able to view the information. We add that information, and there's no target related to this. It needs to be to the legal review. And we also want to add the capability to view the attachments. So we pick view attachments, and the action needs to be attachment list view. And let's say that we want to add two other action, that is send back to study. So you want to send it back because there's the study, so the legal department decided that it needs to be rejected, so it's going to send it back to study so the study can reject it. Sorry, to submit the status, submit. And let's add a new transition that is going to be study. Next. So now when we go to the legal review, we see that we have new actions. The one that is sent back to study, and we can see that it's going to send it back to the previous state, and send to study, that is going to be going to the next state. So we are going to apply the changes. And if we refresh here, we're going to see the new actions. So we can view attachments. I put twice view. So this is an empty application, so there are no attachments related to this one. And we can also view the information from the application. And we can do any action like send it back to the submit state. So from here, you can actually cancel the request. You can pick up, approve, or send it back to legal once it was canceled, it was rejected. The external users add some information that was required, then send it back, and you can send it back to legal. And from here, you can also add some other information, as for example, if you want to generate a specific PDF with some specific information. Generate, for example, legal review. So this is the key, this generate electronic document from template, and the template is going to be one test template that we have that is just empty. But you have some information that says test template or something like that. So we apply the changes. And we can generate the legal review that is going to generate a test template. So everything inside this area, it can be modified, it can be add some information that belongs to the application, or even comments that the user, the legal user, want to add. So that's the way to customize the workflow. So it can be as many states as is needed, and also we can use the actions that are already defined in the system, or generate new actions according to the requirements for each specific customer. And for the business rule, what we're going to see now is that if we go inside one specific draft application, we can view the objects. So there's no object related to this one, but we can create a new point-to-point link. And at the bottom, we are going to see that we have a validate button that if we click it, we're going to have a lot of information saying that this is a VRE minimum. There's a VRE required related to this specific field. And if we want to change this information, or if we want to add more business rules related to any of these fields, we can do it through the rule manager. So for example, we are working now in the point-to-point, so it's going to be Terrace app. And we want to add that the site name is a required field. So we pick from here, site A, and we want to say that the rule is that it's required, and we can edit the message. So if we just add this way, and we run again the validation, we see that the message is appearing here. And if we complete the field, so some information, and we run it, we're going to see that there's no more error related to this one. So the same applies for the other fields. So for example, the frequency, have a frequency mean defined. So if we go to the frequency mean, we see that it's here. So I just click on this, I go to the top of the page, and I can edit the rule. So there are no message related to this rule, so we can add it. We add the message. And now when we run the validation, we are going to see on the okay, so I have duplicated the message, so that's why it's not appearing. It's taking the first one, so let's copy this text and let's edit this one. Now run again. So the issue when you have more than one time define the same information is that it's not going to appear in a proper manner. So let's try with the antenna height. Oh, sorry, I'm adding instead of modifying. That's the issue. So let me. Okay, because I am adding instead of modifying, so let me delete the values that are not correct. Delete this, and now we can see the frequency validation. So we see that the validation is here. So these same rules that we have here in each of the forms that are related to the manual entry, we can also have that in the object list upload. So if we go to the object list upload and we select a file, so we have the one here that has some errors on the coordinates, and we select the file that we want to import and we validate. We're going to see all the messages that are related to this specific file. So we see that we have errors in the line 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, and 3. So are related to the power B, and it says that the max emit power for the microwave link is minus 10 dBs. And if we go to the file that we have here, we can see that in the power, the power is 15. That's why, because the power should be less than minus 10 dBs. So for the power B, we see that they are not labeled related to this. So if we go here and edit the power B, we have that here. We see also that there's no message related to this. So you can edit it and add the message, or say, okay, we are going to allow the minimum value, the max value, instead of say be minus 10, is going to be minus 15 or minus 16. So you modify rule. And let's go again to the add object list. And we can see now that there are no error related to the power B because we changed the parameters, and the power that was entered in the CSV is 15 and the minimum is 16. So now it's half the pass. So this allows the external user to see the errors that are defined by the administration of the different imports. Daniel, do you think we need to go through something else?
No, I think we're okay. We're kind of running up against the time limit. But thanks for that, Luke. And I think we covered pretty well the workflow manager and the business rule manager. Again, if people want to get more details on these capabilities, or they want to learn a little bit more about the Spectrum platform in general, feel free to send us an email, sales@spectrum.center. You can also get information from our website. It's public.spectrum.center. And I think we're okay for today, so we'll continue on with some questions. And there's just one question I got here is regarding the business role manager. How simple is it to create new business rule keys or business rules? Is the question for you, Luke.
So, for example, in this case, let's go back and go to the form because it's easier to see that. So let's say that if we run the validation and we see that there are no validation on the terrain elevation, so we want to create a new one. So first we need to select the elevation name. So I think it's elevate, and we want to create a new, for example, minimum. So you can say the minimum value should be 1. Let's add the rule. And now when we validate this, we can see that, sorry. I'm sorry, because I have to say it's 0. Elevate, the same name. Elevate.
Well, it's in a live presentation, sometimes you make something.
We need to
yeah, we'll check that one in a second. But you can add business rules to the different fields. Maybe we just missed something in the live improvised example, but I don't think that's a problem. One more question. Again, we can cover that with someone in detail if they wish to have more information on that. One other question is just about the form itself. Can the form itself be modified? I guess is the question.
Yeah, we do have some functionalities to edit the forms. So if we go to the application form, and let's go to edit. We have, okay, first I need to add, open the the form manager. And let me go back to the Surface and mobile services. Let's edit this. So the same logic, we have a specific context that we are working with. So this is terrestrial group app. So we have one part of the form that is defined by default, is the first part, and we can do some actions on the different information. So we have a relation one-to-one, so terrestrial mobile application request is the title, and then we have the different fields. And if we want to edit, we can edit. For the default fields, we can only edit the label and if the field is visible or not. So test label. And for the specific fields, we can hide it or unhide it. So let's say that we don't want to see the temporary use because it's not really relevant for this specific application. For this specific workflow for the administration. So temporary use, and we want to hide it. So you can change form. Now when we refresh the page, we see that the label was changed and we have some fields hidden. And we can also add information at the end of the page. So if we want to add a new field, we can do that. So let's say that we want to add, we don't have many information to add because first we need to change the entity to add the new fields, but we have some here, like this memo information. So you want to also have the capability to edit the memo from here. So you can have a large text area with some helper for the memo. We save it. Now that it's saved, we can refresh and we can see at the end, okay, I forgot the label. Save. Let's refresh. And we see at the end that we have this information and there's the helper for the memo, and we can save it. And if we want, we can view that information that is already here in the information. So for that, we have many different type of fields that we can add to the different forms. But it can be customized in this way, so you can add more information or you can hide the default information. And also we can do some specific development on different forms.
Okay, and I want to remind everyone that this is an open platform, so there is a open code. There's ability to modify the actual code to the web stack itself, to the web forms and so forth. So when we do specific customer deliveries, they do get the whole stack. They do have access to getting the whole stack, and then that can be obviously modified at a code level as well if the modifications are extensive or beyond what the interface managers, in this case these panels, these administrative panels can support, such as the business rule manager, the form manager, or the workflow manager. So I think we're good for today. Again, thank you everyone for taking time to participate in this webinar. A little longer than usual, but I think it was fruitful. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us again at sales@spectrum.center. And we will look forward to meeting again on the next webinar. The next webinar will be on the Spectrum Planning module. This will be specifically for editing frequency allocation bands, channel plan creation, and channel occupancy or spectrum occupancy views. So feel free to register. We'll probably have the registration available tomorrow for that webinar. And feel free to download the handout that was included on this webinar. It should be in the GoToWebinar menu. But thank you everyone for your time and have a good day.